What's up, guys, and welcome back to In The Shop TV. Today is a huge day, one that I've been waiting for literally almost my whole life. This is going to be a game changer for this shop. Stick around. We got a 4-post lift. I hate to sound like a crybaby, not that I'm too old, I'm 46, but after doing manual labor my whole life, crawling around on my back and my knees, I'm really starting to feel the effects of that. Time to start working smart instead of hard. Getting the vehicle up in the air when we do this kind of stuff is gonna be quite a big difference maker in how we do things around here. And I wanna be able to do this work for a long time. So anything I can do to save my body, that's a win for me. There's a lot of choices out there when you buy a lift. You can get a 2-post lift, which kind of makes a lot of sense if you want to have the most access to the vehicle because you don't have these long runways there. They're also really good in a fixed location. My shop is orientated long ways where there's one center roll-up door, and then we have over here in the corner where my wife's Corvette is, there's kind of this alcove on the other side of my office. So eventually, when this car and the 55 Chevy truck are done, I'd like to be able to put a lift and stack both cars there for storage. So that's the advantage of a 4-post lift. It is a storage lift, and you can also work on your vehicles too. Now, if my shop was orientated horizontally where I had bays along the long side of it, which is really cool for working on cars, then I might have opted for a 2-post lift in one of the bays, if not two, maybe a 4-post in a different one. But it just makes a lot of sense because then you have a fixed lift in one spot that doesn't have to move. Here in this shop, I'm gonna have to be moving this lift around, which is the other benefit of a 4-post lift, which is that it comes with casters and it's completely portable. When I was researching these lifts, I didn't know what to get. There's a lot of different companies out there, and from what I'm finding out is that a lot of these 4-post lifts that are the 8K variety, they all look exactly the same and are priced about exactly the same and have about all the same features. And I kind of started thinking that maybe it is all the same lift over and over with just different branding on it. Well, it turns out that's exactly true. So this lift is from Race Tools Direct, but it's actually a Tuxedo brand lift. All right, so we managed to get 4 uprights put in position, and these crossbars just kind of slip in. How I did that was I just leaned these posts down and then slid that crossbar in and then lifted the whole assembly up on its end. I did the same thing on both sides. So what I'm doing right now is I got these lock bars right here, and they control the locks on each one of these arms that slip into these ladder bars here. A big problem I'm having right now is that the weight of these things is a little bit much for 1 or 2 people to lift. And on the day I decided to do this, my buddy called and said that he needed to borrow my engine hoist. I had taken the engine hoist out, I had it all set up over here on the side, ready to be my third arm and lift this stuff for me, and now I'm kind of frozen, so I gotta wait till I get my engine hoist back before I can lift these into position. All right, so it's the next day. This is kind of where I left everything. I left everything out, just kind of standing where it is overnight. Back here to approach it with a fresh brain today. I already noticed a few mistakes that I made because I have a bad habit of not looking at instructions. I just kind of start building stuff because, yeah, that's just what I do. But I did look at the instructions, and I did realize that I made a couple mistakes. Nothing crazy, so I started putting the lock bars on already, or the lock releases rather, and they don't go on yet. So I have to take those off before I proceed on to the next step. But I've got this ramp here. I put it on dollies. I'm gonna go ahead and wheel it out of the way because I can't even get my engine hoist in here to turn that ramp over or do any type of lifting until I get that out of the way. And we're a little tight for space in here, as you can see as it is. So that's gonna be first priority, is just making some room. There we go. So while I've got this upside down, what I did is I went ahead and extended this ram as far out as I could. I got about a foot left before it bottoms out, but these cables, I wanted to have the length because once I flip this over and these bars are up and I mounted on the bars, these cables go up the uprights all the way up to the top. So you want to have really as much slack as you can sticking out, so you're not trying to wrestle them out when you're sitting down underneath the thing. So Next step is we have these lock ladders that just kind of get placed in here, and they slip into those nylon, I don't know what you want to call them, runners or whatever, that are attached to this part, to the horizontal bar that goes across from post to post. Now on top, they got this rod, and they make this adjustable. Once you have everything level, then you need to make the locks level with one another. From one side to another, you can adjust the height of this, but for right now, we have top plates right here that go on top and mount up there. And I'm gonna put these on because we can't even lift our horizontal bar without lifting this up with it. So we're gonna secure it down into place with the top plate on all 4 corners. So I've got this loosely placed in there. It gets bolted in on 4 different spots, but I ran the jam nut all the way up so that when we do try to lift these horizontal bars up, it can't pull this up at all. It's fixed in one spot. So that jam nut secures locking this into place. Obviously the cables come out on the inside corners. You can see where the pulley is right there. That's actually a slack safety. So they come out through that slot and they run up, and that's why you gotta put these top plates where the hole for the cable right here is on the inside corner on all 4 posts. All right, so I've got all 4 top plates on, and I've left about, let me see if I can get you guys a better look. I've left about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/16 of an inch of the bolt sticking up on all 4 of them, which will kind of ensure that I have a good starting point level-wise with these ladder locks. All right, so with that bar raised up in the second position, I'm gonna try to get this one up in the second position. I've got this precariously teetering on the engine hoist right here. So hopefully that holds up while I do this, and then we'll try to get this flipped and laying down on the cross members. So I managed to get this heavy ramp on with the hydraulic ram in it. What I had to do was I kind of rotated these straps so that the pivot point was up top here, so that when I lifted it off the ground, it kind of tilted up on its end, so that I can just kind of set it down on here on the edges. And then, you know, I tried to do this all by myself, but I wimped out, guys. I had my wife and my kid come, and I just put one on each end over there, and as I set it down, they just kind of rolled it over, and it just laid down perfectly. I probably should have rolled this over when it was on the ground, so that once I was done hooking everything up in the bottom, I could have just lifted it up flat and then set it down. But where's the fun in doing things right? So if anyone stumbled onto this video because you're researching these lifts and you want to get one for yourself, the instructions are okay-ish, but they don't really elaborate on things. So I just want to, this is one place where I got stuck. Everything up to now has been pretty self-explanatory, but the cable routing, there's a pulley right in here, and the cable routing is to go around this pulley, then up and around this pulley here on the inside of it. The purpose for that is that's a secondary lock, so should your locks fail and this falls, that'll put pressure on it and shoot a second lock and you know, stop you from dying, hopefully. So what you need to do is you need to get a floor jack, and you need to just lift up 1/2 inch on this so that there's pressure off the lock, and then you can push this pulley forward and then route your cable through. If you don't push it forward, it's like gonna be a pain to or virtually impossible to get this cable through there. So just a little trick. It's not that hard to figure out, but if you're at this point and you're watching this video, this will save you that 5 or 10 minutes or whatever it takes you to figure out how to get that through. Floor jack, 1/2 inch, and it comes right out. Okay, so that ramp is on. All 3 cables here are on, and I got one more to do on this side. We've got this side jacked up, and just to illustrate what I was saying, so you can totally now move that forward and pull that cable right through. You have plenty of space to do it. Whereas before, when it's locked down like that, the cable's real stiff. You just don't have the ability to bend it and get it through there. So just jack it up 1/2 inch and you got all the space you need. There you go, see? All right, so I got this one on, it was much lighter. Was almost all by myself. I just had my son this time come and stand in the middle while I lowered it down, and he just pulled it towards him and it just laid right down. I gotta go ahead and just square it up now, get these bolts in. So these pieces of flat stock right here is kind of what holds either your ramps or your wheel stops. And it's also what bolts the ramps to the cross beams. So we just push those in, and then we gotta catch some nuts, spring washer or lock washer, and a nut on the back side of it right here. Okay, so both ramps are on, tightened down, fastened. Cables are in position, routed. They have to get tightened up here. There's a nylon lock nut right there. So they gotta take some slack out of those, tighten all 4 of those up. Now, I'm of the mindset that these are gonna have to be shimmed on the bottom of these posts. I've never seen a garage floor or a shop floor or anything that's completely and totally straight. My floor, in fact, is pitched a little bit this way for drainage. We've got a lot of slack in these cables because if you remember, I pulled that ram all the way out. So what we're gonna have to do is, I guess, try to push it back in a little bit, take up some of the slack. And then I think what we're gonna do is maybe mount that motor up there and I think run this thing. We still got to get our safety releases in. It's a bar that goes in each corner and then it runs under the main ramp. So that when you turn your handle, it just releases the locks. There's going to be a lot of adjusting that has to come to, and obviously this is not in its final resting position. I built it all the way here in this corner because I've got to be able to get this truck out of the shop so I can move this more to the middle and then put this truck on the lift. This stuff, this isn't the biggest deal in the world, but they like really gouge the hell out of this stuff with the forklift. When they're unloading and loading it, some big scratches right there. It's a lift, it's gonna get scratched up. I'm not trying to be nitpicky and complain that, you know, oh, it's got a little scratch on it. I don't mean it like that. I just mean that, you know, when I do stuff like this, if I was gonna put that lift on and off truck, I kind of tend to be a little more cautious. And I just watch these guys with their forklift, they just drive right up to it and grab it quick and throw it on the truck, and they're just kind of careless. And man, it really pisses me off because I just, you know, no matter what your job is, whether you're sweeping a floor at a Burger King or you're building hot rods or you're in charge of the biggest investment bank in the world, just care a little bit about what you do. So where we are at this point so far is, I would say yesterday we got back at noon, started uncrating everything. They had kind of that metal frame on it. People came, they had to borrow my cherry picker, so I just kind of stopped after about 2 hours of work yesterday. So yesterday both 4 columns were up and the cross beams were in, and I think that's where we left off. Today we got both ramps on, the cables routed, and then kind of a pain in the ass, when I unpacked this from the pallet, this ramp was turned completely around where that lip was on the other side. So, you know, that lip serves as kind of like a runway for your jack tray and your tool tray that goes in the middle of it. So I had to kind of turn this ramp within the shop on dollies, and that took a little while in itself because there's space constraints, as you can see. And what we're going to focus on today is trying to get this lift operational. In order to do that, we've got to get some guide screws installed to hold the pulleys in place. We've got to adjust our cable tension. We've got to level our lift to make sure everything's straight now. Install our pump and install our lock release levers to make sure that we can safely lower the lift. So the first thing I'm going to do is install those guide screws that hold the cables close to the pulleys so they don't pop out. I'm going to try to get rid of anything I need to do on my back on the floor early and get it out of the way. I don't know if you guys see that with the glare and all that, but it just kind of holds that cable up against the pulley tight so it doesn't sag on the bottom part of the cross beam. So I've got all the guide screws installed. What I did next was, while I was under there, I kind of took my foot and held on to this cross beam and pushed that ram in a little bit, which kind of took up a lot of the slack that was in the cables. It's not really tight yet because you can still see right here and over there, they're a little bit loose on that end, but I can only push so hard. And I think, you know, just once I hit that button, it'll tighten everything up. And there's gonna be some adjusting up top with those cable screws. I just hung the pump just by 2 bolts. They're not tight. I just caught them so it catches the nylon lock nut, and they're just kind of sitting there. I'm gonna go ahead and position it so I can get the other 2 bottom ones in, and we'll tighten everything down. Got our hose tightened up and mounted to our main runway. And when you're alone, for a helping hand, I taped myself a funnel here because holding these gallon containers with the funnel at the same time up this high sometimes is a recipe for an accident. This is the hydraulic fluid that we're using. This is the basic AW32 from Home Depot. So it calls for 2.5 gallons. So I'm gonna try to put 2 and then eyeball a half. Might go a little bit heavy because you're supposed to bleed it out a little bit. All right, so we have our 2.5 gallons in. I'm thinking I'm gonna need 3 because a lot of this is gonna end up in the ram as soon as we start operating this pump. I tightened up the cables on the top caps and made sure that the lock ladders, I don't know if you can see them from here, those second bolts, they're all even all the way around. Still have a little bit of slack on that side, which I'm a little bit nervous about, but we'll see what happens. I think what I wanna do is maybe start bleeding this. You're supposed to crack this valve right here and then hit the button for a second, then release it for 3 seconds and repeat that until a little bit dribbles out and then lock it back down. All right, let's see what happens. Hey, we got liftoff. All right, so if you guys heard all 4 locks engage at different times, that means that we got some adjusting to do on these lock ladders because we want them all to go pop at the same time and lock in. That means we're level. All right, so we're up here in the air. I just installed our lock rods. We have a linkage that goes in the middle I have to still put in. But right now, I'm just kind of adjusting all of this and getting it set to where it's nice and snug and tightening down the jam nuts on these heim ends, rod ends, whatever you want to call them. All right, so the lock levers are all complete on the sides, but we've got the linkage that runs under here and connects there, and again over here. So we got to get this adjusted nice and tight. All right, so I finally got this completely adjusted to where it goes up and down evenly and it locks evenly, which is what I was having a problem with. All 4 locks were locking at different times. And what I discovered is that if you look at these welded rods on these lock ladders, if you look at the amount of thread engagement, it's totally different on each one. You know, for example, here you have a lot of thread sticking out. The opposing side, not too much. Down on that end, hardly at all. And this side, you have a whole lot. So my mistake is I set these lock ladders at the same height when I installed the lifts to where I had about 1/4 inch of this thread sticking up from the lock nut. Now, the problem with that mentality is, even if my floor is perfectly level, you would say that, well, then these are all gonna be the same length to start with and I'll be pretty close. That's not the case. The reason for that, why? China, that's why. These rods right here, before they welded them in, are all cut at different lengths. So if you're just going by the top of that thread engagement, figuring that all 4 were the same exact length, which I did, you're gonna be completely off. And I'm scratching my head and trying to figure out why are these not going down and locking at the same point. Then I went through the same thing with the cables, because once you get the lift all set up, you're supposed to go around and tighten all 4 cables so that they're at the same length and nice and taut between them once the lift is all level. Those cables aren't all the same length. So if you're looking at the tops where you have some thread engagement that's way high on that side, not so much on this side, barely anything over there, you're saying, what in the hell is going on? But that's because the cables are not all exactly the same length. Again, these are just small little quality control things that will kind of stump you. Is it a big deal? Am I afraid to use this lift? No, the welds are fine. I think it's gonna hold. Everything's gonna be fine. But if anything, if any of you guys are putting a lift like this together, maybe my mistakes or their shortcomings can help you when you're putting a lift together like this. Just seeing this and saying, hey, this guy had a problem. These rods are not the same length. Don't set them evenly to begin with. Just keep that in mind when you're building yours. If you build one of these things, to check all these things individually, look at everything, leave no stone unturned, because what you might be used to is not the case with a lot of this Chinese produced stuff. So hopefully that can help somebody out who's building one of these lifts and save you maybe an hour or 2 of aggravation of wondering what's going on. China's going on. By the way, I did actually end up using all 3 of those. It took 3 gallons. They give you these 2 plastic runways that you can kind of clip to the bottom of the main runway where your hydraulic piston is. And I guess they do that to prevent for leaks. If you have anything parked underneath it, like an expensive car parked underneath it and you don't want to get oil on it. Personally, I get the sentiment and I appreciate it, but if anything's leaking from the bottom of that lift, I want to know about it. I don't want any type of delayed reaction, because stuff's been accumulating on top of those boards for a month and I didn't notice until it finally started to leak out of there. So I'm opting to not use them at all. They do, however, give you these plastic drip trays. There's 3 of them here, which I do actually think is pretty cool, and I plan on using those because for when you're working on your vehicle, draining oil, the stuff gets all over the place, or trans fluid and doesn't go all get in the catch pan, or even just when you spray cleaner or brake cleaner, it's just nice to have something to catch it so it doesn't end up on your shop floor. This is just a tray if you want to put a regular jack in it or a scissor jack, and I'm happy they sent it because I have a really cool idea for this that I've not seen anyone do yet. I think it's gonna make for a really cool video and a fun project for you guys or for anyone else who might be interested. I know in the video it seems like a short amount of time that I've been filming this, but it's been quite a bit of time getting this lift leveled out, getting the lock set up, getting those cables figured out, getting the lock ladders figured out. Due to the inconsistency between the cable length and the lock ladder threaded rod length and all that fun stuff. The really messed up part about all this is now that it's all level, straight, and functioning perfectly, we're gonna have to move it again soon to the middle where our bay door is, so that we can get the 55 truck out, move the lift to the center, and then push the 55 truck onto the lift under no power. So that'll be interesting. And I'm sure we're gonna have to level the lift all over again because the floor is not exactly the same as it is over here because my shop is pitched this way for drainage. So that'll be fun. At least for the second time around, I have kind of an idea of what I'm doing, so I won't spend as much time trying to figure it out. So what I want to focus on next, guys, just not a fan of the whole extension cord type of deal. Lots to come on this thing, guys. We got to hurry up and get this done because I got to get the 55 back on here so we can start working on it. Although I guess I can work on it over there on the floor, but we got a lift. Oh, it's too high for you now. Now you can't get him. Had the chance. Guys, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.